Have you ever missed your ride home, standing alone on an empty street after midnight? They say if you ever find yourself in that situation and catch the last bus stop and the driver doesn't speak a single word, whatever you do, don't get off at the last stop. In a small, forgotten city, there's a persistent legend about Bus 117. It's a phantom route, no longer listed on any official schedule, its timetable erased from public records. No one knows for sure when it runs, or even if it's real, but the few who claim to have ridden it all swear to the same eerie details. It only appears on the thickest of foggy nights, when the streets are utterly deserted and swallowed by a profound, unnerving quiet. It's on nights like these that the line between our world and another begins to blur. One such night, an ordinary office worker named Daniel found himself stranded. He'd stayed late, buried in paperwork, and missed his usual ride home. The air was heavy and cold. The fog so dense it muffled every sound and turned the familiar streetlights into hazy, distant glows. As he stood there, shivering more from unease than the chill, a pair of dim headlights cut through the mist. It was a bus, old and weathered, caked in dust as if it hadn't run in decades. The number on the front flickered, but was unmistakable. 117. The bus pulled up to the curb with a low groan, the sound of metal protesting against time. The doors didn't hiss open like a modern bus. They creaked, like the lid of an old coffin. Daniel hesitated for a moment. Something felt deeply wrong, but the thought of a long walk home in the freezing fog was worse. He steeped on. The driver was a silhouette, a motionless figure staring straight ahead, his face hidden in shadow. He didn't look at Daniel, didn't acknowledge him at all. Daniel paid his fare into the old, clunky machine, the coins clattering with a sound that seemed far too loud in the dead silence. He made his way to the back, looking for a familiar comfort. The bus was almost entirely empty. Every worn vinyl seat was vacant, except for one. Near the front, a woman sat perfectly still, dressed in a long, black coat that seemed to absorb the dim light around her. Her posture was unnaturally rigid. Daniel chose a seat far from her near a window, hoping to watch the city pass by. But as the bus lurched forward, the world outside began to change in unsettling ways. The familiar buildings of his city started to warp and fade, their edges softening into the fog. The street signs he passed were twisted, the letters contorting into symbols and names he couldn't possibly read. It was as if they weren't just driving through the city, but driving out of it entirely. A cold dread began to creep up Daniel's spine. He tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a fog playing tricks on his eyes. Maybe the driver had taken a detour he didn't know. But the oppressive silence on the bus was becoming unbearable. He glanced towards the front. The woman in the black coat was turning her head, a slow, deliberate motion that seemed to take an eternity. Her face came into view, and Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Her eyes were not human. They were two voids, pitch black and depthless, and they were fixed directly on him. A wave of pure terror washed over him. He had to get off. He scrambled to his feet and stumbled towards the front. "Driver!" "Sir," he called out, his voice trembling. "Where are we going?" "This isn't my stop." There was no response. The driver remained a statue, his hands locked on the steering wheel. That's when Daniel noticed them. At first, it was just a glimpse in his peripheral vision. A hand, pale and cold, gripping the top of a seat. Then another, wrapped around a metal pole. He looked around the bus again, his heart hammering against his ribs. The empty seats were no longer empty. Shadowy figures now occupied them, passengers he hadn't seen before, their faces gaunt and their eyes vacant. They were all silent, all watching him. Cold, spectral hands were emerging from everywhere, gripping the poles, the floor, the backs of the very seats he'd just passed. The bus had been full the entire time. Just as his panic reached its peak, the bus shuddered to a halt. The grinding of the brakes echoed like a final, mournful sigh. The driver, without turning, spoke for the first and only time. His voice was a dry, distant whisper that seemed to come from miles away, from a place devoid of life. "Last stop," it rasped. The doors creaked open. The woman in the black coat stood up with that same unnatural stillness and began to walk towards the exit. Daniel, desperate to escape the spectral passengers, ran for the door, shoving past her. But what he saw outside wasn't a street. It wasn't a bus station. It was an endless, desolate field of swirling gray fog, stretching into an infinite, featureless horizon. There was no light, no sound, no sign of life. It was the end of the line. The story splits here. Some say Daniel, paralyzed by fear, never stepped off the bus and is still riding it to this day, another silent passenger on its eternal route. Others whisper that he did get off, stumbling out into that gray nothingness, and was never seen again. But there's a third, more chilling version of the tale. Some say Daniel did eventually come back. He was found weeks later, wandering the city streets, but he was a changed man, an empty shell. He never spoke another word for the rest of his life, his eyes forever lost, staring at something the rest of us can't see. So the next time you're alone in the dark, waiting for a ride, remember the legend of Bust 117. People whisper, if you see it materialize from the fog, don't get on. But if your desperation gets the better of you, and you find yourself on that silent, phantom journey, never, ever ride it to the end. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales from the shadows, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a creepy late night experience. Until next time, stay safe.